Rain of Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that rave line! Woohoo! Oh, I can't believe USC is 7-5 again. Oh no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio. This is the Carcast after USC's 27-24 loss to the Michigan Wolverines in the Big House. We're going to give you our reactions and so much more here live on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant Troy, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant Troy, email address, rantoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227, Sucker Whisperer and Show. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, along with my co-host here in the Rant Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. I don't know that I've watched a game where I've come on the Carcast and I don't know what direction this podcast is going to go.
Oh, I know what direction it's going to
go. Do you have formulated thoughts?
Yes.
Go. Fire away.
USC went into the Big House, and before the game, I said I was nervous about people being overconfident that USC would go out there and smack Michigan around, specifically because Michigan has an NFL defensive line. And what did we see in this game? Michigan's NFL defensive line took USC's one guy currently, you would say, is an NFL level offensive lineman, and four other young dudes who we don't know what they are yet. And they took them to task, and they disrupted USC's offense completely. I see a lot of people complaining about Lincoln Riley in the chat, and that's perfectly fine. I think that Lincoln Riley made some mistakes in this game. Every coach is going to make some mistakes in this game. But when it comes down to it, you can complain about the play calling. You can complain about the time management. You can complain about any of that kind of stuff. When it comes down to it, when your offensive line is getting punked like that consistently, you will not be able to run your offense. You won't be able to run the ball consistently. You won't be able to run into the flat, throw into the flat, because they know that's coming and they can intercept it and pick it off. Mm-hmm. You can't throw deep because your quarterback doesn't have time. You can't throw mid-range because your quarterback doesn't have time. It disrupts everything about your offense. So when it comes down to it, the matchup that we had highlighted as one thing that can decide this game against USC was if that defensive line wins the battle greatly over USC's offensive line. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's what happened. My feeling on this is that we knew coming in that USC did not have an offensive line to contend. I remember a couple weeks ago, I had mentioned, I don't think USC's offensive line is national title level. And I got some pushback from people saying, of course USC can compete for a national title, have some faith, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it wasn't about not having faith. It was about being realistic about what USC has on the offensive line right now. Whether the front guys could stay healthy or not was a huge concern, but even if they could keep that five healthy, that five does not have consistent tackles. That five does not have consistent guards. And there's only so much you can do when that kind of thing is happening. The reason I'm rather calm about this game is that that's an NFL defensive line. Those aren't everywhere in college football. Now, Georgia has an NFL defensive line. That's why USC is not a national title contender. Texas has an NFL defensive line. That's why USC isn't a national title contender. Because if you get into the playoff, you're going to have to play those teams, and they would do to you what Michigan did to you here.
Yeah.
But offensively, there was no recourse because this offensive line just isn't there. And we knew it wasn't going to be there because, number one, the recruiting hasn't been strong enough on the offensive line. And number two, the depth, they were working from a place of immense disadvantage coming in to repair the depth on USC's offensive line, and this was always going to be a 5-year project to get actual developed offensive line who you are plugging in when they are upperclassmen to be your offensive linemen. So on offense, I'm not stressing because they are who I thought they were, and
they are who we thought they were.
And I'm going to give them credit because they came out in the second half. The tackle change in the second half did help a lot, and they fought back and they generated some points, and that was big. Mm-hmm. But Miller Moss can't throw a pick six and expect to win this game. That's very simple.
Yeah.
But that's one play. Like, overall, the offensive performance wasn't good enough, but that offensive performance is good enough if that one play doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then you flip over to the defense. And on defense, this defense is so transformed. It is so wonderful to watch them tackle in open space, to be competitive in the trenches, to have linebackers who are making great plays, to have DBs that are making great plays. It's wonderful to watch them. But when it comes down to it, is this defense ready to contend for a national title? Not if they're going to give up 60-yard rushing plays.
Yeah.
Not if they're going to, in the last 3 minutes of the game, allow a 63-yard run against a team that was only ever going to run the ball, could not throw the ball, and basically handed the game to Michigan because at that point, Michigan could 3 yards in a cloud of dust into the end zone, which is literally what they did. So it was a great defensive performance, bar 3 plays. And those 3 plays lost USC the game because you take any one of those plays away and USC wins the game. So any one of the long runs, because if Mullins doesn't break that play at the end of the game, Michigan can't 3 yards in a cloud of dust their way into the end zone. They don't score. If they don't pick up 63 yards in the span of 5 seconds, they don't score to end the game. So you take that away, you take the Donovan Edwards touchdown away, or the first Mullins touchdown away, and you win the game. You take the pick six away, and you win the game, despite the offensive line being well below what USC needs its offensive line to be. That's how close USC was to winning in the Big House. And I want people to understand why we talked about how difficult it is to go into the Big House and win a football game. That is not a stadium, and that is not a team that you go in and you expect to push them around. And yes, Texas did it, but you know what? Texas was in the playoff last year. Texas is a title contender. Texas has been a title contender. Steve Sarkisian took over a Texas program that was in a similar position to where USC was a few years, and he has had to work many years to build up his defensive line, his offensive line, all of that talent. That is a years-long project to get Texas to where they are. USC isn't there yet. And that's just the fact. And to me, that makes this much easier to stomach, as disappointed as I am, because this win was on the table. And I just love watching USC win, and it would have been an epic win.
Yeah.
As disappointed as I am, I can't bring myself to being angry. Not at Lincoln Riley, not at Josh Henson, not at Danton Lynn or any of the guys who missed tackles on that last big run. I'm not angry at any of them because I think they are all, well, the players on the field, I think, are all giving their best for where they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I can ask from a USC team. What this game to me comes down to, and this will be my last point before I get off my soapbox. To me, what this game, I take away from this game, the number one takeaway is USC was in the dumps in the first half. Nothing was going right for USC. They fell behind. They looked like this could be the end. We were watching the game with friends. We kept saying, well, this is the end. This is the end. They come out of halftime. The defense is absolutely on fire. Outside of that 63-yard play, the second half defense was impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
And the offense, which had been absolutely smoked and just beaten, and Miller Moss thrown to the ground, and just everything was going wrong. They kept their heads. They generated points. They got USC a lead. They fought. So to me, yes, this game proves USC isn't a contender, which I think I already knew, but this confirms it. But mostly, this team has heart, and they play hard, and that defense is legitimate. And
hot damn, that defense.
I like this team. I wish I liked the offensive line more, but I know why the offensive line is the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they will get better as time goes on. But I'm not mad. That's where I'm at. I'm not mad.
No, I know this is a take that is a cop out, but I think that this game and the LSU game, in a lot of ways, obviously not literally, but in a lot of ways, was very identical. And so much of the reaction is results based.
Mm-hmm.
SC gets the 4th down stop. I think everyone's hopping on here. Everyone in the chat, pumping their fists like, yeah, SC went into the big house and they answered the bell and all that stuff. It's completely different. And that's where I want to make the point, SC is 2-1 through 3 weeks in which they played LSU in a neutral site, Utah State at home, and Michigan, the defending national champion, on the road. Their first game in the Big Ten. They're 2-1. If you would have said that before the season, you would have taken it. Absolutely, you would have taken it. If you don't say that you would have taken it, you're lying to yourself. You absolutely would have taken it. And I think when you look at how the Trojans played in this game, it was one of those where the second quarter was horrendous, right? Really the first half on offense, the first 4 drives or whatever it was, we're all 3 and outs, or there was one drive in which they got a first down, but it was horrendous. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't run the ball up the middle, and they kept trying to. And then things sort of turned around the last 2 drives before the half. They get the field goal and the field goal drive. They ended up getting sacked. Miller Moss gets sacked on the Hail Mary. But the halftime adjustments, moving the guys around on the offensive line worked. And you look at that third quarter, with the exception of one play, the pick 6, which is truly damning in a game that you lose by 3, a game in which
against an offense that really couldn't get anything going.
An offense that would love the free points. It ultimately decides the game, right? But you look at that third quarter, we pull up third quarter only statistics. Yards per play, SC 7.8, Michigan 1. SC had 180 yards in that third quarter alone. Michigan had 6. That third quarter was monumental because the Trojans went in, changed everything at the half with the offensive line. The defense, things started trending really poorly in that second quarter. Michigan's last drives before the half, right? 5 plays, 63 yards, 7 plays, 27 yards and a punt, 6 plays, 80 yards and a TD. And the next one still had 23 drives before they had to punt. They were getting the run game going. They had hit those big runs with Mullins and Donovan Edwards to score touchdowns. It's 14-0. The game felt insurmountable at that point. And SC found a way to have the momentum go completely in their favor in this game. And I hate the idea of moral victories or anything like that, but I think that is truly a more telling thing about how the Trojans can play in this season, as this season goes on, than the results of this game. And I think the bad thing is the offensive line play like you mentioned. I don't think it bodes well for playing against Penn State, for instance. Which, if we can say Penn State is basically Michigan but with the quarterback, that's gonna not bode well that way, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that the defense gave up those 3 long runs. The tackling was tried and true throughout the entire game until the long Mullins run there on the final drive. And the hard part is we were watching it, it was John Humphrey, right, that comes in and misses the first tackle. It's a leverage thing. I think he gets there a second too late for where he is, doesn't have the leverage, and then Kamari Ramsey, which would have been fine when Kamari Ramsey comes in to sort of clean it up, but Kamari Ramsey isn't able to clean it up, and then the combination of those two missed tackles ends up, really hurting. It almost didn't matter because SC nearly got the stop at the end. So long story short, I think that SC made something out of how bad this game was trending. And I think that has a lot of value. There's a lot of, I know there's people frustrated with Lincoln Riley's play calling. I guess there are plays that you want back. But that's not why they lost the game. There were a couple of drops over the middle that would have been surely helpful. The offensive line not being able to hold their own. They got better as the game went on in that third quarter when they made the changes, but the last couple of drives, Josiah Stewart continued to still get past Mason Murphy, who had moved over to play left tackle.
Who played left tackle way better than Elijah Page was, and was still getting eaten alive. So again, you can only change so much. You can only do so much with your play calling. There were definitely plays that I wanted Riley to have back. I wish they had gone into this game with the concept of pass to open up the run.
Mm-hmm.
And the early running philosophy, I think, hurt USC in the long run. I don't think they fall behind the way that they did. The defense was gassed going into the second quarter, and a lot of that was because USC couldn't move the ball. And a lot of the reason USC couldn't move the ball is because they were off schedule every drive because they were giving away one of their downs. And there were other mistakes like, false starts and holding penalties and whatever. Miller Moss missing some throws.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things that happen to football teams. This is just...
going back to the play calling thing, because David in chat says Lincoln calling shovel passes at a bunch of screens isn't going to change.
Okay, if you're facing a defense that is applying heavy pressure, one of the ways to neutralize that is to call shovel passes and screen passes.
Right. And the shovel pass is essentially a slip screen.
Yeah.
But it's a shovel pass.
So again, it's a part of that is execution. Part of that is you still need to block for a second on those screen passes to open them up.
And I know this is frustrating, but and this isn't a satisfying response to the play calling stuff, because I think that the tight end screens to Lake McCree, which unfortunately looks like it's that looked like a really bad knee injury. That
he did not look
the way he was crying too on the sideline. I hate when they zoom in on the guy crying on the side. Dude, this is an awful time for him. We can see one time that he's going through it. We don't need the zoom in again.
Yeah.
But I think my problems weren't that Lincoln went to the slips and to the screens. I think my problem was the kinds that they were. I would have rather just gone to a slip screen than a shovel pass, because a shovel pass always has a sense of danger, even if the upside is better because it's a little bit off kilter. But the screens, where are the screens to Zachariah Branch?
Mm-hmm.
Where are give more screens to Woody Marks and guys that you want to have the ball in space with blockers out ahead of them. Lake McCree is not that guy.
Yeah.
Lake McCree is a valuable part of this offense. He is not the guy who should be catching tight end screens 3 times in a game. As to catch a defense off guard. Yeah, absolutely. 3 times in a game, and 2 of them in a 3-play span. I think one of them was a true screen. The other one was just very similar, a nice little flat route to Lake McCree that just didn't gain anything. That was more of a check down in that sense. I think it doesn't make the play calling look better, but still, he's not the guy to run those screens.
Yeah,
but beyond that, the running, I had no problem running on 3rd and 9. I know that 3rd and 9 is a place where you want to throw the football. You're in the shadow of your own end zone. Miller Moss had just thrown a pick six 20 minutes before that. Like, I can understand
My issue was Miller
the
taking the
surprise
sack on
run
that
there.
first down. Miller had time to throw that ball away, and he should have.
Yeah. Any more initial thoughts before we start looking at like stats and open up questions and all that?
I think that there is absolutely room to criticize the coaches and the players for missing the opportunity to win this game. But to me, this like, I don't know. I think about what would a Clay Helton team have gone into the big house and done, and they would not have been 4 plays away from winning that game.
The halftime adjustments never would have happened. We were my dad came over, our friends came over, Michael and Kenny and Annie were here, and like we had a grand old time. But like, one of the things that we talked about was like the second quarter, when the second quarter got out of hand with the run game, it would have continued to happen defensively if this was last year. And yes, I know there's the frustration with the missed tackle on the long play, but like, that's the only play you can look back to in 3 games and be frustrated about. Go back and watch the 2022 championship game against Utah. There's one of those on every single play. And also, it's game 3 under Danton Lynn. The defense is going to have time to get better and improve. And I know that the 290 yards of rushing looks bad.
Oh, I want to talk about that for the record.
I get it, but I think there's deception in the minds that we were talking about, in the over-under before the game. You put the line at 150 or whatever. It was always going to be over because Michigan was always going to run on every play anyways. That's the only way they were going to get the yards.
Okay.
So their rushing line isn't a normal rushing line.
I crunched the numbers here.
It's 3 yards per play.
157 of Michigan's 290 rushing yards came on 3 individual plays. If you remove those individual plays, which I know you don't get to do in the real world, but like, what was the efficiency of USC's run defense against a Michigan offense that was literally going to run the ball every play, and everyone's like, stack the box, and essentially that's what USC did, by the way. 3.09 yards per carry. That's what Michigan averaged outside of those 3 individual plays where there was a breakdown. If you had handed me that, I would have absolutely taken 3.09 yards per carry. And again, that's why I found the 63-yard run at the end of the game so devastating, because if he gets tackled, Michigan they weren't even running the ball well enough consistently. The only reason they were able to win this game is because they were able to 3 yards in a cloud of dust their way into the end zone. And they can't do that if they're on the other side of the 50. It was a devastating especially because it was missed tackles. That was really, really hard to watch. And on
the other side, by the way, SC, you take out the 65-yard run, the SC running backs 3.86 yards per carry, which is surprising that it's that high to me.
Yeah.
I think SC ran the ball pretty effectively in the second half. It didn't have to be a 7-yard per carry offense. Like, you get 3 yards on first down, and you just stay ahead stay on schedule, and you have 2nd and 7. And I think just starting at 2nd and 7 instead of 2nd and 11, 2nd and 10. I think it made it significantly easier for SC to stay on schedule and put together those long drives which they had repeatedly in the second half to really, sort of turn things around, especially when SC was able to get all the stops on defense. And you mentioned how the not having that 65-yard run or 63-yard run for Mullins would have really changed things defensively too. Like, I wanted to get out on the pod and the Carcast here and say, you know what, SC held Michigan to 12 yards in the second half, and they held LSU to 1 rushing yard in the fourth quarter, and like, look at how this team closes like a freight train defensively against big opponents to win games. And unfortunately, that one play ends up sort of losing SC the game.
But this is the difference between a team that is ready to contend and a team that isn't. It's really that simple. And like, I'm seeing people in the chat saying like this team sucks. Like, that is objectively false.
Yeah.
This team is a very good football team who lost by 3 points to the defending national champions with an NFL caliber defense that they made more plays. They made the plays that got them the win, and you can tip your cap to them at a certain point. I think you muted all of it, Michael. Yeah, everyone can hear Jesse. I don't think they mind. You have to tip your cap to Michigan for going out there and fighting for the win the way that they did. But when it comes down to it, like, you're in the big house. You're on the road in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat saying Michigan isn't that good. No, Michigan is a good Michigan's defense. Is top 5 nationally.
Is very good.
Like, no, I'm not going to say that Michigan's offense is very good. Although I will say Michigan's run offense. If Michigan had a functioning quarterback, this would be a perfectly functioning offense. Their run offense. Mullings is an outstanding back. Donovan Edwards is a really strong running back. Like this. Don't act like this is a crap team that USC lost to. Is Michigan a title contender? No, they're not. But their defense, the reason they're not a title contender is not because of their defense. This defense is outstanding. And we will see that continue to bear out this year. It's just like if you are taking this game as a sign that USC is not drastically improved over where they've been over the last couple of years. Like, I mean, what did we say, Michael, when we went into the LSU and Utah State game? We were shocked at how well USC had transformed the defense so quickly. Well, guess what? This is game 3 with Danton Lynn coaching these guys. Game number 3.
Yeah.
And they gave up 3 plays.
Yeah.
It happens. I expected them to give up way more than 3 plays in the first 3 games of that kind of thing as they work through some growing pains with stuff. But like, it's and everyone in the chat saying they don't have a quarterback. Yeah, they don't have a quarterback, but they have an athletic quarterback who can run. They have an offense. They have great running backs who can run. They have an offensive line that's very good that can open spaces for them. Again, they don't have a quarterback, and that greatly hinders their ceiling 100%. But don't act for a second like Michigan wasn't one of the better rushing teams in the country last year. They continue to be one of the better rushing teams in the country.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the way it is when it comes down to it. Like,
I thought for being one-dimensional, I thought Michigan found a way to make it work. Which was weirdly enough, being more one-dimensional helped them because I think they found more creative ways to try to move that ball in the second quarter.
I mean, I think it
didn't work in the second half.
The sort of option plays that they ran were effective. They make the defense have to stop and think. It's just one of those things. Jesse is big mad. It's just one of those things where they were absolutely one-dimensional, and USC absolutely made them pay for that. This is what I want people to understand. Outside of those 3 plays, they held them to 3 yards a carry. And one of those plays was bad missed tackles, and that's definitely not acceptable. One of those plays, I think there was some very blatant holding that didn't happen. That didn't get called. And, sometimes good players break off big plays, especially, by the way, when you're stacking the box and you don't have a second level effectively because you're stacking the box. So, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, oh, USC should have been expecting run and stacking the box, and then USC stacks the box and they get burned that one time that, that happens sometimes. USC is not a perfect team. And I don't think if you went in thinking that USC was a perfect team, then I just think you're being unrealistic. Like, I don't know what to tell you. To me, this was a team that fought really hard. that doesn't have an offensive line that is good enough to contend against NFL defensive linemen. They were fighting an uphill battle with the offensive line. They were fighting an uphill battle with the being away on the road in the Big House, which is a venue where Michigan doesn't lose very often.
Yeah.
And then also, like, I'm not going to pin this game on the refs, but I thought the refs were horrendous today on both ends. Like, they were just bad. The two missed face mask calls.
There was a lot of not calling anything.
Yeah, until they decided to just then call stuff. And it's just like, yeah, I think that the refs didn't do USC very many favors. Jay Mariano points out there was a horse collar that didn't get called. The fourth down conversion that they score a touchdown on after looked short to me.
It looks short, but it's also one of those ones that
you can't review. If they review it, they're not overturning.
My issue is more so they didn't even measure it. It was close enough. Measure it. Even if it's you're just doing it for optics, whatever, measure it. And if it would have been reviewed, it would have stood, just because you can't. You
just don't see them overturn plays where it's not like very obvious when it's a spot.
Measure it, even if it's clearly a first, whatever it is, just at least measure. Let's get to some super chats that we got to here in YouTube. Irvine Cattle Ranch says, "Fight on. This is part of the process. Not happy, but part of the process. Fight on. This team is growing and learning. We haven't had that in years." Thank you for the super chats. We got another one from Killer Panda that says, "How come SC struggled to hold up in protection against Michigan's D line while Texas worked them?"
Because Texas has NFL talent on their offensive line. I don't know what else to tell you. Texas has been recruiting their offensive line extremely well for many years, even before Steve Sarkisian got there. That is a big boy offensive line, and I'm sorry, USC does not have a big boy offensive line.
Yeah, they
don't. And my hope is that some of these guys develop and become functioning offensive linemen. But I'm sorry, Jonah Monheim is the only player that Michigan would have traded for on the offensive line. It's just
and
we've been knowing that. Like Elijah Page has a very bright future.
Yeah,
but he's a redshirt freshman, and there's a reason teams don't like playing redshirt freshmen on the offensive line. There's a good reason there. So I just think the difference between USC and Texas to me is very clear, and it's that Texas had offensive linemen. In there in the first place, and then brought in more great offensive linemen and developed them and got them to a point where they can be very good. And USC transitioned with an offensive line that was literally the cupboard bare and has had to rebuild both sides of the line and have whiffed on some offensive line talent that would have been really, 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 really helpful to have.
Yeah.
And we can have conversations about why USC hasn't been able to win those recruiting battles for offensive line. I'm certainly open to having that conversation. But when we're talking about the offensive line that USC has available for them today, going against somebody like Mason Graham, Mason Graham is going to be eating up NFL offensive linemen next year when he's goes pro. So I don't know. It's just what it is. It is what it is. I don't know what else to ask of this offensive line, if I'm quite honest.
Yeah. Another super chat we got from Hokey P. "This is the best possible L. Losing on the road by a small margin to the defending champs will ignite this team. There are great things ahead," says Hokey P. There's another comment in the chat from Cali Guy 1990. "This team effing sucks." They lost by 3 on the road to the defending national champ. I get it that SC was the favorite here. But
we've seen USC teams that suck. And this is not one of them.
I know that the chat is, I've seen Josh Henson should be tarmacked from Dale. Not every loss needs to result in somebody getting fired. Uh, I there was a comment before I missed it about this loss is on Lincoln Riley. Sure, yeah,
I think you can make that point because I think
sure.
he
I
started
think
the game
you can
wrong.
make that point, but also you can think I can make the argument that SC isn't like the reason that SC nearly won this game, and you can even argue that SC should have won this game given how the second half played out. If they don't give up the long run and all that stuff, is because of the coaching adjustments at halftime. So, like, I have a hard time sitting here, and sort of like saying that the coaching was the reason that SC didn't win this game, when defensively, this defense is monumentally better than last season because of coaching. And, the offensive line play be damned. The reason that SC was able to have a say in this game and took the lead in the fourth quarter was because of the adjustments that we saw, moving the guys around on the offensive line. They were able to finally throw the ball downfield a little bit because Miller Moss got a little bit more time, like a second more, but like that second matters in a quick football game.
I do think, there's been a lot of talk in the chat about Riley's clock management, and I do think USC's last offensive drive was misplayed to a certain degree. I think that running the clock would have been very, very valuable there, obviously, considering, how little time Michigan had when they scored.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, okay, so if Riley, we were talking before that drive started, like, okay, is he just going to go out there and run the ball? And I thought he would. And we were all going to be mad about that, because if you were going to go out and run the ball when Michigan knew you were going to run the ball, you were going to get stuffed and you were going to punt. And then people would be like, oh, you did that. So like, yeah. I think Lincoln Riley is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't.
Well,
especially when you're operating with an offensive line that's getting beat that poorly.
And I go back to, like, I know that this is a lame thing to say, but like, I think so much of criticism in this game goes back to results. Yeah. and results.
Because if that shovel pass, if Woody Marks catches that shovel pass and runs for 15 yards,
then it's the greatest play call you've ever seen.
Nobody has an issue with it.
Yeah. If the 3rd and 9 gets 2 more yards and he gets the first down, it's the greatest run call you've ever seen. If not, then what was he thinking running on 3rd and 9? And it's like, sometimes things are not going to go your way. Okay. Yeah. Like that's the way I look at it too.
There will always be shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And I agree. I think
you say shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
It shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
You said shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Like your orders.
I have no idea what order it's supposed to be, but
interesting.
Either way, like, yeah, I think Riley should have run the clock there. I think that I didn't like that little shovel pass. I didn't. I thought that was very dangerous, by the way, and I wouldn't have done anything dangerous in that situation.
Yeah, one of the reasons I don't shovel pass there is because it does add some inherent risk. And if it's a little bit of if it's a slip screen, where it's a normal pass than a slip screen shovel pass, I don't know. That feels more high percentage to me. Maybe
you're better off running it. You're better off running a draw. Like at a certain point, it just. Yes, there are things USC could have done differently. Also, the dudes who have been tackling well all season could have tackled one time in the most critical moment of the game. Like, there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas, shoulda, woulda, couldas across the board. And I think Lincoln Riley definitely owns some of the clock management. I think he owns the first half game plan, which I think was just flat out a mistake to try and run the ball to set up the pass. That was never going to work.
Yeah.
And even if the idea was, let's see if we can, we knew very early that.
Yeah, I would have abandoned the middle run way earlier, even though I think, like, looking back and how the second half went, in the USC wins if video that we put out on YouTube, we talked about how SC needs to run the ball selectively, right? Because that's what they did against LSU. They didn't run the ball tremendously well against LSU, but they ran it in certain spots that was critical to the game, and it won SC the game. Because there were key drives where they were able to, run here and there and get it. And in that second half, you saw that. You absolutely saw that. How much of that was because of the adjustments on the offensive line in terms of personnel? And how much of it was they were calling sort of different blocking schemes, or the runs were slightly different? I don't know. Maybe you need to sort of rewatch and see more that way. But the run got better as the game went on. But at the beginning, absolutely, I think they needed to abandon the run, especially between the tackles when they were running right into Graham, who was right there the whole time. One of the best players in the country, and running right to him doesn't bode well. We got another super chat from Tim in LA who says, whatever Jesse's mad at, he agrees with her.
So you agree that Michael should have taken her out?
Don't say the O word.
Yeah, should have taken her OUT out earlier.
Yeah, we got a Carcast.
Yeah,
you guys, this Carcast,
we couldn't delay the Carcast.
Is more important than our beautiful little girl's bladder. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But yeah, Jesse, of course, not the underdog, but I'll tell you who is. Underdog Fantasy. And you guys, should go after America's favorite new fantasy app. It's football season. You can download the app, underdogfantasy.com, or in your app store. And it's a long football season, so you might as well get on it and have plenty of opportunities. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing whether you think your favorite players will go higher or lower than their stat projections. Whatever the stat projection was going into this for Alex Orgy in terms of passing yards, hope you took lower. 32. I'm going to guess that lower won that one. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog, simple to use mobile app, or underdogfantasy.com. Sign up with promo code Reign of Troy, all one word, REIGNOFTROY. I can spell. Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Reign of Troy, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. If you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Or, well, even easier, just text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Made it. And lots of more things to get to in the comments. Cam Life super chat says, Michael, in that long run that Jeffries missed, our MVP on defense thus far had a very lackluster effort. He cost us that long run as much as Jeffries. Your thoughts?
Jeffries? Who am I missing?
I don't know. Either way, Humphreys? Probably Humphreys.
Is it Humphrey?
Well,
Humphrey was the one who missed
19
the tackle.
Was number 19.
Yeah, that was a devastating. That was the play that lost the game in the last few minutes.
And like I said, I
don't. It's not the end of the
It's not about Humphreys missing it. It's about Kamari Ramsey also missing it, and the combination of them both missing it. And it goes back to the optics of it's triggering that missed tackles were the bane of every USC fan's existence for years, because it's where the struggles were. It ends up being that's what cost SC a win in a game in which they tackled well. They did all the things right on defense. Yeah, they gave up a few big plays, that hurt them. But
this will be Danton Lynn's teaching. Danton Lynn will get to go in there and say, guys, all of your effort can be undone if you let off for 1 second.
Yeah, for sure. Mark in the chat says, "Where was Ramsey today? His blown tackle cost us the game." Where was he? He didn't need to be a huge factor, in part because he's on the back end.
USC they weren't throwing.
They weren't throwing the ball,
and USC's corners and linebackers were more often than not making tackles close to the line of scrimmage. So you didn't Ramsey wasn't.
Ramsey had 3 tackles and a pass breakup. I think if he makes that tackle at the end there, I think that sort of makes up for any sort of lack of production. But he didn't make that tackle, and that was a tackle that he could have helped out Humphrey there and definitely
and you probably win the game there. And I think they will highlight that. They will highlight that when they do their film study, and they will use this as a moment for a defense that is literally could not be more improved, but is still developing and still this is not the finished article. Danton Lynn doesn't come in and snap his fingers and suddenly USC's defense is a national title winning defense overnight. Again, Rome was not built in a day, and that's just it sucks. I'm not sitting here and saying that doesn't suck. I'm devastated. I'm crushed. I believed USC was going to win this game going in, and then I fell into a dark pit of despair, and then USC climbed out of it and made me believe that USC was going to win this game again, and then that happened, and it sucked. It's also not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that USC's defense isn't wildly improved across the board. It doesn't mean that USC isn't a very good team that put up a very good fight in a very difficult situation, against a good team that also is very flawed in its own ways, but their flaws didn't match up to USC's flaws. And guess what? They had their home field. Replay this game at the Coliseum, and who knows? It just is what it is.
Our buddy,
to me, this team is so well improved. I'm not even mad.
Yeah, we got a comment from Steve, our buddy Steve in the Bay Area. Says this is what happens when you play a ranked team on the road. Yeah, it's hard to win ranked games against ranked teams on the road. Yes. We got another super chat from Isaiah. Big shout out to Isaiah here. Second half adjustments bring optimism of growth. Yeah, I 1,000% agree. I 1,000% agree. I know that, losing a game in heartbreaking fashion absolutely burns. But SC lost the game in heartbreaking fashion to the defending national champ. And I know that SC was favored in this game. And I know that this is not the national championship team that Michigan was a year ago. They don't have the same coach. They don't have all the stolen signals. They don't have all those things. But it's still there's a reason this game was on CBS because it was 2 big teams. It was never going to be easy. I do think that one of the frustrating parts I think about the optics of this game is giving up 290 rushing yards. I think allows people to say that SC is not ready for the Big Ten. Gary Danielson talked about it on the broadcast that SC did respond that they were ready for the Big Ten with how they adjusted in the second half. And I personally, I think that speaks volumes more than anything else. But it's still 290 yards, doesn't look good on paper. And on top of that, the offensive line struggles it was better in the second half, but it still wasn't good enough because Josiah Stewart looked like, prime Javon Curse out there. He looked incredible.
And he's been very good all season. And he was, and Will Johnson is one of the best corners in the country. And he made a play that proved he was one of the best corners in the country. And sometimes that will happen. This is a reality check for a lot of USC fans who apparently got way overconfident. And Tim and LA said, we lost by 3 after a 4th and goal conversion at the end of the game. People acting like our welcome to the Big Ten was getting mollywopped. No, USC proved in this game that they were physical. USC proved in this game that they can go toe to toe with ranked opponents on the road. USC proved in this game that the defense is vastly improved. I think Miller Moss continues to answer the call. The offensive line, I can't like. I'll give them props for being significantly better in the second half. But
it still wasn't good enough in the second half.
It wasn't good enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just where USC is right now. And it's not excuse making.
Right.
It's just, this is the reality of where this team is right now. And there have been people in the chat talking about how this is USC and, this is USC and USC should be up there with the Georgias and Alabamas and Texases and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, USC should be, but why is USC climbing a mountain right now?
You also can't teleport there after, where they were last year.
Because for decades, USC didn't invest in its facilities, didn't invest in its staff, didn't invest seriously in the football team. Even back to the Pete Carroll era, where they just assumed that because Pete Carroll was such a great coach that they could just skate by on not improving the weight room while he was there or any of that. Like, USC has been behind the 8 ball for decades. And guys, that's what happens is you end up making poor coaching decisions and you set your program back. And when you finally start investing and finally start getting serious about succeeding, you're still going to have growing pains because you're starting from a position that you weren't going to be in a position of strength. And
you
know what, like next year, if we're talking about USC's offensive line still being completely incapable of doing anything, then I'll start ringing the alarm bells. But I could have told you the first 3 years of Lincoln Riley's offensive lines were going to be kind of rough because there was 5 years of pretty mediocre recruiting.
It's a hard spot to fix with the transfer portal.
And as we've established, you can't fix this position in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it takes time. It takes a lot of effort from all different parties, and one loss to Michigan on the road does not mean that the journey is over or that, USC is suddenly back in the dark ages of the Helton era. Like, if you can't recognize that this team is significantly improved, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say.
Let's open up the mailbag to.
By the way, USC had an offensive performance like this one last year at Notre Dame, and that game got out of hand, and USC got spanked, and they didn't get spanked here.
Yeah, let's open up the mailbag and run through the billion questions that we got here in the chat.
You've got mail.
All right. Ron Murdy says, how concerned should we be with Zachariah Branch's play through 3 games?
I thought he was one of USC's most effective receiving options in this game.
Yes.
I would have liked to see him get involved on some of those screens that have worked before. I'm not sure why USC just didn't bring those to the table, but I'm guessing, and I haven't obviously watched it back, I'm guessing that Michigan was doing something to take those away, which if I was Michigan, that's absolutely what I would do.
We know that they were dropping because there were big stretches of this game where they had essentially a 2-man front, right? Like, they had,
and when those two men are Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, you can get away with a 2-man front because,
And getting mauled by a 2-man front, not completely a 2-man front because you still got the 2 edge guys, but like two guys with hands in the field turf. They were dropping guys back and trying to take away the deep ball, even though SC hasn't really thrown a lot of deep balls as the season has gone on.
My frustration with the receivers, including Branch, is that there were some dropped balls in this game that, USC in a tough game where a lot wasn't going right on offense, you need your receivers to make those tough catches. And I know, they're tough catches. You call them tough catches for a reason. It's easier said than done, obviously, but if USC wants to, again, take that step towards being elite, you need to have guys make those tough catches. You won the game against LSU because Kyron Hudson made those tough catches, and that could have made a difference today. But a lot of other things could have made a difference today. So it's just one of those days. I see also people talking about Zachariah Branch in the return game. The return game is more than just the return man, and frankly, I would more often than not fair catch, even inside the 15, because the last thing you want is to have the ball bounce and then recover it at the 2. Like you're better off starting at the 10 than the 2. Like there's a reason behind the madness, and you can disagree with it, but it's to me it's sound reasoning.
The metrics say to take the ball at the 25 every time, and I like science. I agree that that's the smartest thing to do. I think where it differs for SC is that you have Zachariah Branch, you don't have Velus Jones back there. You know, it's not to take anything away from Velus Jones, but like Zachariah Branch is arguably, if not the best returner in the country, a top 5 returner in the country, right? Like everybody would want returning their kicks. And I think his ability to break one should get that is worth the dice roll. On the last drive of the game, when they got 37 seconds to go with no timeouts, he lets it go. I would have taken that kick as, I don't care how deep it was, I would have taken it.
No, absolutely not.
But Zachariah Branch returning a long kickoff gives you there's an opportunity in that. You have to go 40 something yards with no timeouts as it is. You might as well give the best guy that you have with the ball in his hands an opportunity.
No, because again, it's not just about the guy with the ball in his
hands. I would agree in most instances, but when it's down to 37 seconds and your back's against the wall, I'm rolling the dice. Charleston says, super chat. Thank you for that. Cheers. This loss will be held against us by the College Football Playoff Committee.
I can tell you right now that is absolutely 1,000,000% false, because you know what the College Football Playoff Committee is made up of? People who know the game, who will watch the game closely, and who will see that Mason Graham and Josiah Stewart and Will Johnson are 3 of the best defensive players in the country, and they ran that game defensively. And that they will do that to most of the teams that they face, and it will be USC will be given credit for playing Michigan tough at Michigan. Now, USC needs to be in a position where they can be
where that matters.
Where that matters, to be sure. But this loss will be better than a lot of the other resume losses that will be out there. Like, would you rather be USC losing to Michigan at the Big House or Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois, even a ranked Northern Illinois at home?
Yeah.
You'd rather be USC against Michigan. Like, this will be one of the better losses that playoff caliber teams would have on their resume. This is not a loss that keeps USC out of the playoff. Additional losses keep USC
especially
out
in
of the
the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, but this is not the one.
Yeah.
No.
In the 12-team playoff, you need to go 10-2.
If you lose this game, but then and again, like, it still comes down to you need to beat Nebraska, you need to beat Penn State, you need to beat Notre Dame, and you need to take care of business against all the rest.
Yeah.
All of those things still need to happen. But if you win 2 of those 3 against Penn State, Nebraska, and Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, and Notre Dame, you'll have 2 really good wins on your schedule, on your resume, along with the LSU win. And this this loss will not cost USC a playoff berth unless it is one of 3.
Yeah. Cam Life, another super chat. Thank you for that. Question is Zachariah Branch experiment as a punt returner? Should it be done and give someone else a chance? Maybe Jay Fair.
No one would do a better job than Zachariah Branch has done.
To be fair to Jay Fair, I don't know how to compare him to. Was Jay Fair returning kicks at Auburn? I honestly don't know.
I don't know.
But maybe, sure. I don't have a big say other than we saw Zachariah Branch turn games around last year. Look at the Utah game. I know SC lost the game, but SC had a chance to win that game at the end because Zachariah Branch put them in position.
Why are we talking like Zachariah Branch was bad on punt returns today? Was he bad on punt returns?
You know what it is? I think Zachariah Branch was so good last year that I think the expectations are the highest that they could be.
The vast majority of punt returns don't go anywhere, guys.
Yeah.
Like Zachariah Branch is a threat to take any punt return to the house, and we saw him open up some opportunities to maybe create something special in special teams today, and it obviously didn't come about. But like, yeah, it just doesn't have. What is it? Nelson Aguilar holds the record for most return touchdowns at USC, and that was like 4 in a season where he had 2 of them against one of the worst Cal special teams
punt
units.
Returns, not overall, but no, yeah. I think didn't Adoree have the most punt returns?
Or whatever it is.
Overall like, returns is still Anthony Davis, right? It's
whatever it is.
Anthony Davis has the most kick returns, but Adoree has
whatever it is. Like really big punt and kick returns are extraordinarily rare, and this is not the game. If he had muffed a punt or something like that, yeah, we can have this conversation. But like Zachariah Branch on punt returns was not a problem today. That wasn't the issue.
Yeah, I thought 3 returns for 19 yards,
and he led USC in receiving 6 catches for 98 yards. So again, I don't know why people are talking as though he had a crappy game. He was USC's best receiver today. I don't know what else to tell you. Like,
I think the thing with Zachariah Branch is that I think the expectations are on him we saw how impactful he can be in special teams. So I think it's natural to want that same impact on offense, and we haven't seen it. Although I will say, I think this game might have made the case for why we haven't seen it. Gary Danielson really wanted to pin the pick 6 on Zachariah Branch. I think it's a little bit of both. It's a risky call the whole time. Miller Moss was staring him down on the hitch the entire time.
That's a throw. I mean, USC's gotten.
It's a dangerous throw.
Has gotten away with one of those in basically every game, because the problem with those kinds of throws, which again, you sort of have to be throwing and risking because you can't run the ball and you can't sit in the pocket. But if a DB, especially one as talented and good as Will Johnson, sees the look and then jumps the pass, those are there for the taking. And I don't know what the receiver is supposed to do necessarily.
I think there's a world in which Branch could have been in a spot that was better to prevent the pick 6. Sure. I don't disagree with that thought, but I'm not like, there's a lot of things that could have prevented the pick 6.
Yeah.
But where I say that, like, there was a drop on the last drive of the game where Zachariah Branch,
he's got to catch that ball.
He's got to catch that ball.
Yeah.
And I think he's got to be a little bit more sure in his route running. At the same time, Miller Moss missed a couple of throws today.
Yeah.
There was they had Branch downfield on the right side in the second quarter. They ran it again. It was sort of like a little thing where he was there, and Miller just missed him. And if he drops it in the bucket there, Zachariah Branch has got the ball with plenty of room to run. So,
and this is another thing that I want to point out. Like, Zachariah Branch is, I mean, obviously we want him to come in and hit the ground running the way that we saw like Robert Woods and Marquise Lee and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But he's a sophomore in the beginning of his sophomore year. Like, he's not the finished article. Have some patience with Miller Moss too. Like, yeah, he got baited into throwing that ball, and it was not good. But this was Miller Moss's 3rd start as a quarterback.
Yeah.
You know what? When you have redshirt freshmen starting on your offensive line and a first-time starter at quarterback and a bunch of sophomore receivers, like, yeah, you're going to end up with these kinds of things because you live and learn in football. And again, to me, it's a journey that USC is on. And
you mentioned the journey. I think this is the perfect time to butt in here with a question from Josh in Buckeye Country. Does the narrative change about SC this season after the loss? I don't think it should.
Well, okay, if USC wins this game, the narrative changes around. The narrative goes off the rails about USC, because if USC wins this game, then suddenly it's like USC is a national title contender, which they never were, by the way. And full blown playoff lock, that kind of stuff. By losing this game, USC doesn't. We don't get that narrative switch on USC. It goes back to the USC of probably more of the preseason, which is probably not better than the preseason because the defense is so improved. But it just goes back to, this USC team is a good, they're a good Big Ten team. They're not, I would not put them in the conversation to win the Big Ten. They could get there, but we got to see what they do against, Penn State and Nebraska and all those. But I think it just tempers expectations a little bit, which to a more realistic level. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think USC, I don't think anyone who knows what they're looking at looks at this game and thinks this is a red flag for USC, except for the offensive line being trouble. And anybody who was watching would have known that before.
I do think that there's a little bit of this game being sort of a Rorschach test. If you went into this game saying that SC is not ready for the Big Ten, then you're going to say, well, look at the offensive line. The offensive line was ass. They just got manhandled by a front that had two guys with their hands in the turf. They're not ready for the Big Ten. If you came into this game feeling confident about SC's defense, you're going to look at it and say, look what they did in the second half. Yeah, they gave up the long run. They gave up the touchdown at the end. But, they completely stuffed Michigan for 3 big drives when they absolutely needed to get momentum back in the game. And that proves that SC has the ability to play in the Big Ten. Whatever you want the narrative to be, it can be from this game. If you want to say that SC got validated by this game, you can say that. If you want to say that they're a fraud because of it, you can say that. And I think that sort of underlines how annoying narratives can be, right? You can say anything with sort of, any performance, to be honest. Hector in the chat says JMU hat is random because I'm wearing a JMU hat. If you're listening to us and not watching on YouTube. Hokey P also commented on the JMU hat. Yeah, it's all Dukes today, baby. 70 points, 70 in Chapel Hill on the road. Those are my Dukes. For
the record, James Madison is Michael's dynasty team on College Football 25. So
yeah, and in our big online dynasty league, I'm James Madison. So I'm all Dukey, baby. I'm all Dukey, especially on a day in which they try. UNC losing to a team called the Dukes and giving up 70 points. Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
All right. Another super chat we got from Mr. Jaden 23. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Defense is physical. This was the team's first true road game, and they played in front of 110,000. Not easy, not a finished product yet. The upside is huge.
Yeah. I think there's tons of upside defensively. I think there's tons of upside offensively too. Obviously, the offensive line needs to play a lot better, and I need Lincoln Riley to create more contingency plans for when they aren't playing well. But this was the biggest test of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State and Notre Dame will surely test USC again, but the lessons learned from this game potentially help you deal with those games, and that's what you hope to see throughout a season, is to see what went wrong for you early in the season and correct those mistakes and figure out how to go out there and win. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm kind of used to USC losing around my birthday. It's a trend because Pete Carroll always lost the
crushing disappointment.
USC always lost the Pac-12 road opener. Which always came around late September. So
the conference road opener.
The conference road opener continues. I mean, it's just one of those things. So I don't know. I've seen many a USC team lose a tough game in September and be better for it because they got better as the season went on. Now, we can't assume that that's what USC is going to do. We need to see that from the guys who are out there, from the coaches and all of that kind of stuff. But right now, I like USC's chances in pretty much every game going forward because, again, USC played the best defensive line that they're going to face, and
I think Penn State will be close.
Well, Penn State's defense is very good, and Notre Dame's defense is very good. The defensive line, especially, but like the individual talent on those lines isn't. Not that those lines aren't very good. I'm not trying to say that, but in terms of individual talent, Michigan is the ones up there, like way up there. And so this was the biggest test, and USC lost a game that they should have won because of some missed tackles in the second level in the final 3 minutes of the game, and or a pick six, and or a touchdown run with a holding penalty that wasn't called, and or a touchdown that came after Michigan should have been turned over on downs. I don't know. I don't think USC is down and out, and I like USC's chances considering what we saw in this game going forward.
Let's talk about injuries. Mac says, how many players did we lose today for the season? And then Kaylee K says, it looks like we need to invest in more strength training. How many players did we lose today as he took a major hit? Mekhi Lemon went off to the hospital. Looked like Lake McCree has a major knee injury, but obviously that would need to be confirmed by the team with tests and all that stuff. Keely Arnold left late in the game. Well, he left twice, but especially late in the game. We've been Carcasting. Alicia, have you seen any tweets from the press conference or whatever?
I just pulled up Twitter to see.
Well, while you're looking that up, I do want to say, like, the idea that the strength training needs to be improved.
Lincoln Riley didn't have any medical updates on Mekhi Lemon, Akili Arnold, or Lake McCree. What we do know is that Mekhi Lemon went to the hospital, which tells me that either he suffered a concussion or like a neck injury or something like that. Like, I'm
going to imagine that it's a concussion because they allowed him to walk off the field. If it was a neck injury, they would have put him in a brace right there.
Yeah. So, and if that's the case, rule him out for a minimum of a week, if not 2. The rest, who knows?
About the strength training thing, though, McCree took what was it? Was it a helmet to the knee?
Yeah.
And
he got tackled.
Mekhi Lemon
knee.
Got popped as sort of like a blindside block on a punt. I don't. Was it Arnold that took a knee to the chest or something like that?
Twice. So the play that he ultimately came out on was he got his arm got stepped on.
Yeah.
So
those are
it
not
looked like they were checking his
issues.
shoulder. Yeah, strength training does not have
like those are not muscle pulls. Those are not things that I think that you can, like, those are all fluke injuries. Like to go
well, and by the way, as Paul K says in the chat, Mekhi got blindsided. Like that was a blindside block, the thing that Jacoby Lane got popped for a penalty and they didn't call it. So, again, things that I thought the refs missed.
Yeah, like Cam Rising, I know that you could say that he's injury prone, but like his injury now is because
he got
into
a
Gatorade table and he messed up his hand. Like, that is not being injury prone.
Injuries happen. It sucks.
Sometimes, weird things happen. Yeah. All right. Troy X2X says, how does this affect SC's ranking? Yes, he'll probably drop a few spots, maybe like the 15 or so.
Okay, so this was a discussion.
Maybe they swap places with Michigan.
Because on fansided.com, we do updated rankings after anytime there's ranked teams that like play or lose. And I didn't write it. My one of my colleagues, Scott, wrote it. So I haven't seen exactly where he put USC, but we were talking about it before we jumped on the Carcast. I was talking about it with him. The thing is that Oklahoma State lost and Oklahoma is likely to lose. And USC will not drop behind LSU or Notre Dame. So Michigan will move up ahead of USC, probably into 11 or 12, depending on how the voters value Utah or Kansas State. And I do not think they will value them too heavily, but whatever. So I think Michigan jumps up into 11 or 12, and USC probably only drops 2 or 3, maybe you're like down to 14-ish, unless Oklahoma wins, and then the rankings are a complete utter, like there's a lot that changes if that's the case. So USC will not drop far, is the point.
Yeah, we'll see. Also, like we talked about with the playoff stuff, SC is going to get like, I know people don't like talking about good losses, but like this is a good loss.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna lose, this is the way to lose.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like, polls and stuff like that. Hector in the chat says nobody is coming recruiting wise if we continue to lose. I
continue to guys.
Gerard over at USCfootball.com always talks that the players do not care about individual performances. Like that does not matter to a recruit. If anything, you could sell it as, hey, if I was there, we would have won because I would have made. I wouldn't have missed that tackle. Whatever it is.
If a recruit is watching this defense and they are paying attention to like box score and 290 yards, which by the way they aren't, that's one thing. But a recruit watching this defense is saying, "Damn, Danton Lynn has this defense turned around big, and I want to go join him."
Yeah.
And frankly, when it comes down to it, if I'm USC, if they're a good offensive lineman, you throw the bag at them at this point because,
Cam Life says we need more out of Lucas and Shelby. There's humongous difference between their athletic defensive ends and ours. Yes, I thought that both of those guys, SC's ends in general, Jamil Muhammad, like they were not a factor. The biggest players in this game defensively.
It's hard to be a factor when they don't drop back to pass, except for like
but
a handful of times.
Like, SC was able to seal the edge very often.
Yeah.
But they weren't necessarily the difference makers like Josiah Stewart was. Josiah Stewart looked incredible.
Yes, but Josiah Stewart is going against Elijah Page and
who
Mason
is dropping
Murphy,
back
and I'm sorry,
fairly often.
Michigan's offensive line is better than USC's. That's objectively true.
Yeah.
And Miller Moss is dropping back 40 times a game. And again, trust me, I think that USC needs a lot more impact plays from those edge guys. I don't think this was necessarily the game to judge whether or not those guys are making impact plays, because for my money, all I wanted from those edge guys was to not let Alex Orji get outside and kill USC with his legs. And by and large,
he really didn't.
That didn't happen.
He had a couple plays where he picked up first downs, but he didn't give none of those long runs. The big three runs were Alex Orji runs.
Yeah,
they were able to contain him for the most part, which is important when they're essentially running the Wildcat offense. E-Dub Foster says, what is Lincoln Riley's record against ranked teams?
I looked this up.
We had it in the rundown a few episodes ago, but what do you got?
Well, so from what I found, it's 17-12 going into the season. He's now 1-1, so I believe it would be 18-13.
Yeah, that's
pretty good.
Yeah, Pat Rule is what, 2-22.
Mm-hmm.
So
James Franklin is.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
It's a fine record.
And because I know people. We talked about it, a few episodes ago. People bag on Lincoln Riley's ability to win big games, and he has not won big games at SC, in part because SC lost a lot of big games last year, and in 2022, they lost the Cotton Bowl and the Pac-12 championship game, which obviously were the two biggest games of the season, but Lincoln Riley's ability in these games is significantly better than a lot of the coaches that get pointed to for their records. Mm-hmm. He's won at the Horseshoe, right? Like he's won places. John in the chat says we still have a chance for the playoffs, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The way that the playoffs are, the third loss is the eliminator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if SC were to go on a run, like there's still nothing stopping them.
The tricky thing is that you could end up with 6 SEC teams that all have 1 loss, like in theory.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, we've been around the block often enough to know that those games don't always turn out just the favored team wins. Like, that's just not how things work out.
There's no world that it like. I'm not going to sit here and say that SC goes 11-1. Absolutely, I'm not saying that. But on the chance that they did, there's no world in which they're not in the playoffs. So, Dan says, do you think the game would have changed if Lincoln didn't take timeouts during Michigan's final drive? They only had 38 seconds when they finally scored.
No, because Michigan had timeouts still. So I don't think,
I thought he played it well.
Michigan
I thought he did the best he could.
Michigan was not factoring in the clock as much as USC was factoring in the clock, because if Michigan needed to stop the clock, they had opportunities to do it. And in any case, by the time USC got them into a 4th down situation, like, again, there was still plenty of time on the clock, even if Riley hadn't taken those timeouts. They just probably get up to the line quicker, and that might even be worse for USC because they might have gone up tempo, and then USC's line is having to deal with being on the back foot. So I don't think that time management was the problem. I thought
the time management there was
drive
great.
Before, where USC didn't run clock when they were on offense, was a bigger issue. And I just saw a quote from Antonio Morales on Twitter from Riley saying that Riley said, quote, "I thought I could have been better. I don't think I called a very good drive there." So he admits it.
Yeah, and that's what we want to hear. We want to hear everyone, aware of their shortcomings and get better from all those things. Looking at the game book, clockwise, what really cost SC the opportunity on that final drive was the last first down. Not the touchdown, obviously the touchdown, but like the first down before that, because if they get the 4th down stop before that, well, I guess the clock wouldn't have mattered. But if they give up a touchdown on the 3rd and 1 at the USC 8 with $1:17 left in the game, then SC still has 2 timeouts and has, over a minute left.
Yeah.
Once they got that first down, it allowed them to take more time off the clock. Plus, Michigan had an incomplete pass that saved SC a timeout.
Yeah.
Also, the Achille Arnold injury saved SC a timeout as well. So I thought, Lincoln did what he could with those timeouts in that situation. He did what he could. All right. HR Pick and Stuff says Michigan won 25 of their last 26 home games. People were saying they don't have a great home field advantage. They have a great home field advantage. I think there's a difference between, is Michigan's crowd the loudest? No.
But they're not exactly quiet.
No. There's nuance to this. Is Michigan's crowd the loudest? No. Is the big house as scary as the Horseshoe or Beaver Stadium or Camp Randall? No. But it's still the defending national champion in front of 110,000 people after a 5.5-hour plane ride across the country on Eastern. Like, there are all these other things that are still a thing to get over, right? Winning on the road against ranked teams is considered hard for a reason. SC was still favored, and SC still, if they're able to block on the offensive line, win this game, and they don't throw the pick six.
Even without USC being able to block on the offensive line, there was one play.
Yeah.
It was a one-play game in the end.
Right.
Take away the pick six, or take away one of those runs, or take away that last run. What do you do?
David in the chat says the big house is basically the Coliseum. Sure.
Well, it's hard to win at the Coliseum too, by the way.
Because it's hard to win road games.
It's hard to win road games. Yeah. I'm sorry. Against David Garcia in the chat says no one is scared of going to the Coliseum. You know who thought that the Coliseum was a difficult place to play?
Cam Ward.
Cam Ward said the Coliseum was harder to play than Florida and the Swamp.
I think there was a little bit.
I know, but like the Coliseum is not an easy place to play.
No, but he said the Coliseum before he said Hudson.
Yeah,
and
that's all
I had
I'm
seen
saying.
a TikTok where he was like on this podcast with Shedeur Sanders, and he said the Coliseum was the hardest place for him to ever play, and that he did not mention Autzen at all in that clip.
Yeah, well, that might have been some Pacific Northwest
maybe still.
But either way, like to act like the Coliseum, like people come into the Coliseum and win all the time. That's not the case, especially not if USC has talent.
Yeah.
And USC doesn't, it doesn't matter who you are. Most teams don't go to the big house and win. And I'm not making an excuse. It's just very difficult to do that. Be real, people. Be realistic and real. It's just college football it's hard to win these kinds of games. Yeah. And USC could have won this game. And USC will be kicking themselves for not winning this game. And we are all sitting here bummed out as all hell because USC did not win this game that was extremely winnable. But don't sit here and act like this wasn't an extremely difficult scenario for USC to win.
Yeah.
USC winning here would have been extremely impressive. It's just...
It was a scenario that was, I hate using the word easy, but more attainable than we thought it was going to be before the season because Michigan's offensive woes were way worse than anyone thought that they would be. And USC
would have been better off. This is also, USC was unlucky in getting Michigan by the time they figured out that Davis Warren was not going to work and Alex Orji, and they were going to just go all in on the run. If USC had gotten Michigan when they were still trying to have some semblance of a balanced offense, I think it goes different. So like there is also a lot of people in the chat talking about how this, how dare USC lose to a one-dimensional offense. Well, when you're very good at doing the thing that you are one-dimensional at, you can win a lot of football games. What do you think the air raid is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Galib in the chat says that Cam Moore did mention Autzen post-game against Florida. He did. He mentioned Autzen post-game against Florida. I was talking about he didn't mention Autzen in a TikTok from the offseason in which he was asked by Shedeur Sanders about difficult stadiums. Yeah. All right. A couple more. Michael, great name, by the way. Michael in Long Beach. Would you have taken 2-1 preseason through the first 3 games?
Yes.
Given this schedule, yeah.
Going into the season, we said if USC is 2-1 to start the season, whether it's beating LSU, splitting LSU and Michigan, going 2-1, absolutely take it, no question. Yeah. Would I take it where USC is 2-1, where that 1 was a 3-point loss? Yeah, absolutely. Would have taken it, 100%.
I think you might have even taken it more so.
Yeah.
If you'd have been told that it was going to be a 3-point loss in which you lost on a 4th and goal. Yeah. All right. We got a question from Jay in the chat, Jay Mariano. Maybe a good comparison for progress is how UCLA's defense was after 3 games last year. How are we doing so far? I think, obviously eye test wise, I think the defense is passing the test with flying colors. Pulling up the stats for UCLA's defense last year through 3 games, I don't think it's comparable. UCLA's opponents last year through 3 games, Coastal Carolina, good G5 team, but it's Coastal Carolina. At San Diego State and home against HBCU FCS team North Carolina Central.
Yeah,
each of those games might present their own challenges. They're not LSU on a neutral site and Michigan on the road. In those games, in terms of yards per play, all of them were under 5 yards per play. The last 2 under 4 yards per play for UCLA's defense. So UCLA's defense was good from jump.
Yes, UCLA's defense was good from jump, but they didn't get really tested until with decent offenses, at least some semi-challenging offenses.
Yeah.
They got Utah that was a Bryson Barnes Utah. That was an ugly game on both sides, by the way. I remember that.
Yeah. And then the next week
they gave up 17 to Washington State. They lost by giving up 36 to Oregon State. Held Stanford to 7, held Colorado to 16, and then lost to Arizona. That was the Noah Fafita and T-Mac monster offense, giving up 27. They gave up 17 to Arizona State, then gave up 20 to USC, 33 to Cal, and 22 to Boise State.
Ryan in the chat says where UCLA was great last year was limiting explosive plays. They were number 2 nationally and only gave up 2 20-plus yard runs.
And USC has been up until those 3 runs. USC, that's one of the things that I thought was really good about USC.
36-yarder against LSU, but that's it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna guess, and this is part of where circumstances of a game come into play, because by the time Donovan Edwards breaks one loose, like, you can see that defense is getting gassed because they were on the field too long in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
I also think at a certain point, USC, this is one thing that you have to guard against defensively. They were pressing, like they were coming up closer and trying to make those like stops for short and loss. And when you do that, you open up possibilities where the running back just needs to make one cut and they're gone.
Yeah.
And I think that what we saw against like LSU, for instance, a team that they had to pay attention to in the passing game, safeties were further back. When LSU broke off a run, it was a big chunk run, but there was safety help to close it off, to prevent it from going the distance. And in this case, because Michigan did not have a passing threat, USC kind of played into being up closer to the line of scrimmage, which, sometimes double-edged sword there. And USC got burned. And that is one area where, that's the breaks.
I saw a comment in the chat that said that SC got burned by a prevent defense. And that's the opposite of what SC was doing in this game. If anything, they got burned by stacking the box. All right. Lamont says, can you speak about how good Eric Gentry was today? The Angry Giraffe showed up. He was great. Chris Trevino
I want the 55 to get given out so much. Like, just give the man the 55.
Mentioned it on Twitter, like, give him the 55. Yeah. Like, I wanted at first when I saw Chris's tweet, like, who would oppose him getting the 55? I wanted to be snarky and say, like, literally Club 55 would oppose that. But that shouldn't be the case.
I have one opposition to Eric Gentry wearing the 55, and it is this: the 55 is a
would look weird on his body.
It's a big body number.
Yeah,
it's a wide number. Gentry being the giraffe, he's kind of a narrow person.
Yeah, the 18 looks.
The 18 is already a little big. Putting the 55 on him would be like putting the 99 on it's the 99 on the kicker or 98 on the kicker or whatever. Like, it's just it's all number. So I don't know, maybe that's the reason, but also at this point, I do not care. Get that number back into circulation, please.
Both fumbles that SC got in this game, both strips, were incredible. The Woody Marks play. First of all,
what a player, man!
What a sequence of events. SC doesn't get the third down, but all of a sudden you're like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a turnover. You lose 15, 20 yards, but you get a whole new set of downs. Who cares? We'll take it. Like that had to be the mindset there. Then you look at the review, and his arm wasn't exactly coming forward that they could at least, not enough to overturn it, but Woody Marks being able to run back and take it from Grant that way. Heads up reminded, I think it's probably reminded you of Dory running back and trying to chase down dudes against Alabama back in the day. It was a great effort. And
not even just that. The effort is that's effort. That's tape effort. Like, that's highlight this effort as, never giving up on a play, all that kind of stuff. Dude also got stuffed over and over and over again with an offensive line that wasn't giving him any room to run, and he kept at it, and he eventually broke free. Man, if you're just a little bit faster, he would have gotten that touchdown. But I just thought the running backs, Miller Moss and the running backs, I just think they really toughed out a game that they were beat up quite a bit. And Woody Marks is a hell of a player, guys.
Yeah. I think that there's, there was a world there for a second where it looked like he wasn't going to be able to, like, him not being getting in the end zone might cost SC points. And ultimately didn't matter. I want to score in that drive anyway.
I want to answer some of the people about Jaden Mayava. We had friends who were saying that Jaden Mayava should maybe come in.
Yeah.
I think that's easy to say. specifically, HR Spick and stuff said that Saban would have pulled Moss when he had negative yards after 3 drives. Remember when he pulled his quarterback and put in Jalen Hurts against USC and he broke open the game? I do not think that is the case at all. Nick Saban pulled the quarterback and put in Jalen Hurts because that quarterback battle had literally gone up to the last second and they didn't know who they wanted.
Yeah.
The reason that Alabama wasn't getting yards on those drives against USC was not because their offensive line was getting torn apart by USC's defensive line. It was because the quarterback wasn't making the right decisions. And putting Jalen Hurts in opened up that game. I understand the idea behind saying that Maeva would have come in and provided USC a threat with his legs, and I certainly think that would be the case.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw, again, the last similar offensive line performance from USC was against Notre Dame in South Bend last year. And guys, Caleb Williams couldn't handle the pass rush being what it was against Notre Dame last year.
Yeah.
Jaden Maeva is not starting for a reason. Miller Moss is the starting quarterback for a reason. And yes, Jaden Maeva might have gotten out of one or two of those tackles, but Miller Moss is the starting quarterback because he knows the offense, does what Lincoln Riley wants him to do, and makes the throws that Lincoln Riley wants him to make.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't sit here and say that Jaden Maeva would have absolutely fixed everything because we don't know if Jaden Maeva would have been able to make the throws that Miller Moss made to open up this game. And we don't know if Jaden Maeva would have taken risks that would have resulted in turnovers or, anything like that. Like Miller Moss's lack of mobility was not the main issue because a mobile quarterback was still going to get hunted down by those athletes on Michigan's defensive line, because when your offensive line is a swinging door, you still are going to get sacked most of the time.
Yeah, I also think like the quarterback position, it's not like pulling a goalie in hockey when you go down early and you just you need a spark, you need a change. It's not baseball where you want to get the matchup that you want and play the percentages. Because yes, I think you can make a sound argument that a player in the archetype of Jaden Maeva could have given SC more of a chance in this game for X, Y, and Z because of his mobility and all that. I don't disagree. Like that it's sound logic that makes sense. The problem is that quarterback choices have ramifications. Taking out Miller Moss affects team chemistry. It affects his confidence. It affects, it puts pressure on Jaden Maeva. Like it affects all these things. Then if Jaden Maeva comes in and SC wins the game because he was able to run, now all week we're going into Wisconsin. We're talking about, is there a quarterback, controversy? You create all this external things. All these other facts are at play. Football is not a video game. In a video game situation, yeah, cut and bait with Moss and going to Maeva might have made sense. That's not how football is run. Like the idea of Jalen Hurts coming in for Blake Barnett is completely different. This is Miller Moss's team. There's no denying that this is Miller Moss's team. If it wasn't solidified 100% that this is Miller Moss's team, that's a completely different story.
Yeah.
But this is Miller Moss's team. And the other thing, going back to, Clay Helton benching Max Brown for Sam Darnold played in the first couple of games, had packages where he came in pre-garbage time against Utah State. And first of all, that was probably not great for Max Brown's development and confidence too. All that stuff matters. I get it. Mark in the chat says Miller's a big boy. He's team first. Sure.
I would
ideally,
wager,
yes.
I would wager if you polled the team and asked whether they wanted Miller, if they thought Miller Moss should have come out of that game, nobody on the team would have said Miller Moss should come out of that game.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the whole thing. The backup quarterback is always
somebody in the chat was pointing out Jack Sears and Garrett Green. And USC has always had a mobile guy in the background. And yes, you had the Sam Darnold situation, but the fact of the matter is that the Sam Darnold situation has been few and far between. Like USC made the quarterback change to Jackson Dart in 2021, and guess what? Jackson Dart was really talented and really fun to watch, but also dude made a ton of mistakes and didn't exactly fix what was broken for USC. I'm really excited about Jaden Mayava, but like again, there's a reason he's not starting, and that's no knock on him.
Yeah.
But I like Miller Moss was not the problem today.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it.
We got to wrap up.
I think that's it.
Credit to David Garcia for pointing out the
all
chat
right.
series thing.
That's gonna wrap us up. We're gonna be Jesse's happy because she's gonna be able to go OUT in a second.
Yeah,
so,
she's been waiting very patiently.
Good on her. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys are awesome. We couldn't do this without you. Thanks for all the super chats. You guys are incredible and appreciated. As always, we appreciate you. Give your calls into the Rant Line, 818-643-7227.
Sucker whisperer.
Sorry. Sorry, Jake. Jake went to Baton Rouge. I think they lost, right? Like
I believe so.
We turned off that game at one point.
They played LSU tougher than I expected. I think you want to talk about moral victories. I think UCLA had a bit of a moral victory.
Sure.
Playing UCLA today.
All right. We will see you guys on Monday at 5 p.m. To talk more USC and Michigan. Take your calls, take your questions, emails, all of that stuff. Until then, we will see ya.
See ya.
See ya.